Hey there. Ready to jump into the world of kayaking dry suits?
Always up for a good gear deep
And I
dive.
gotta tell you, this isn't just theoretical for me. I had this kayaking trip a while back, early spring, I think it was. Figured I was all set, layers, waterproof jacket.
The works.
Exactly. But when you know it, wind picked up, waves. I ended up soaked, shivering. Not the peaceful paddle I had in mind.
Yeah, sounds like a wish I had a dry suit moment. They're not just for like hardcore expeditions, you
Yes,
know.
that's kind of what I thought.
A dry suit can really stretch out your paddling season, make those chilly days way more fun.
So that's what we're diving into today. Been reading up articles, especially this one, uh, kayak dry suits, how they work, and the different types for kayaking.
Good one.
It really lays it all out. And the main thing seems to be like creating this waterproof barrier. But then they keep talking about breathable fabric, honestly. Sounds a bit like magic to me. How can something be waterproof and breathable?
It's actually pretty clever. So these fabrics, they have these microscopic pores, big enough to let water vapor your sweat out,
Okay.
but too small for actual water droplets to get in, like a one-way door for moisture, right?
Huh, okay.
And a lot of times, the key player here is Gore-Tex. You've probably heard the name.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's not just one thing. There are different grades of Gore-Tex, each one with its own rating for breathability. So they're designed for specific activities and weather.
So there's Gore-Tex A&D, then other breathable fabrics too. Man, this is more complicated than I thought.
A bit, yeah.
But it makes sense you mentioned different grades because this article talks about how breathability is tied to like how hard you're paddling AD the temperature outside. So if I'm going all out generating heat, I need a higher breathability rating, right? Even if it's a cold day.
Exactly, you're getting it. Higher breathability means more moisture escapes, so you don't get that clammy feeling, which you would get with a less breathable fabric. And this is key for active kayaking, because unlike a wetsuit, a dry suit itself, it doesn't actually give you insulation.
Oh, right.
You're relying on what you layer underneath for warmth.
So it's like a whole system then. The waterproof shell keeps water OT, and then the layers underneath are what keeps you at the right temperature.
Precisely. And you can adjust those layers based on the water and air temp. That's what gives you the flexibility to use a dry suit in lots of different conditions.
Makes sense. Of course, this all depends on those waterproof zippers actually being waterproof.
For sure. They're like the guardians of your own little dry world in there.
Speaking of zippers, they look pretty intense in pictures. And I noticed some suits have extra zippers. Are those the relief zippers?
You got it. Relief zippers, sometimes called drop seats, they're becoming pretty standard.
I can see why.
Yeah, trust me, on a long paddle, being able to, answer reacher's call without taking the whole suit off. Game changer.
Totally. Now, the articles I've been reading, they really stress how safe dry suits are, especially in cold water.
And they're right to do so.
They're not messing around. Hypothermia is serious business.
Absolutely. If you end up in the water unexpectedly when it's cold, staying dry can literally be the difference between like a scary moment and real danger. A dry suit gives you that protection, time to recover, get back in your kayak, signal for help.
So it's like an insurance policy almost. Not just about comfort, but could actually be life-saving. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get why people invest in these. But even if you don't go for an accidental swim, just being wet and cold can ruin a good kayaking trip. Comfort's a big part of enjoying being out there.
No doubt. Imagine being able to paddle for hours, explore, enjoy the view without that constant, I'm wet and cold feeling. And that's where choosing the right type of dry suit comes in.
All right, so dry suits keep you dry, they keep you safe. But now I'm curious about all the different styles. It's almost like picking the right kayak itself. So many options. I keep seeing front entry and rear entry. Is it as straightforward as it sounds like a jacket versus a wetsuit?
That's a pretty good comparison. Front entry suits, they have that zipper, diagonal or vertical on the chest. They're usually easier to get in and out of, especially solo. But that front zipper can be a little bulky sometimes. Might even get in the way of your paddling, depending on the design.
So there's a trade-off then. If I'm all about that smooth, efficient paddle stroke, maybe a rear entry suit makes more sense.
Good thinking. Rear entry suits, zipper across the back of the shoulders, gives you a smoother front that a lot of paddlers find more comfortable, especially for longer trips or if you're doing any rolling. But you'll probably need a buddy to help you zip up.
Ah, so it's not just what I like, but also thinking about if I'll be paddling alone or with someone. Okay, now what about semi-dry suits? Are those like partly dry? What are those all about?
Semi-dry suits are kind of hybrid. They use neoprene gaskets at the openings instead of latex, neck, wrists, that sort of thing. Neoprene is really comfy to wear, but those gaskets might not be as watertight as the latex ones on a true dry suit.
Gotcha.
So some water might seep in, especially if it's rough out there or, you really take a dunk.
So maybe semi-dry is fine for, like, warmer weather or calm water,
Right.
but not if it's really cold or I'm going to get splashed a lot.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to bet on a semi-dry suit if you're paddling where hypothermia is a real risk. And then there are two-piece dry suits.
Oh, yeah, the mix and match. Top and bottom separate. What's the advantage there?
Versatility, that's the big one.
Yeah.
You can wear just the top as a dry top when it's warmer, then add the bottoms when you need full protection.
Oh, I see.
Plus, if one piece gets damaged, you only replace that part.
Smart. Especially since these aren't exactly cheap. But I'm guessing that connection between the top and bottom probably not as watertight as a one-piece, right?
That's a good point. That seal might not be as strong, so it depends on the conditions and how much water you expect.
So it's all about trade-offs.
Yeah.
Okay, now what about this whole breathable versus non-breathable thing? Is it as simple as it sounds?
Pretty much. Breathable materials like those Gore-Tex types we talked about, they let your sweat evaporate so you stay drier and more comfortable. Non-breathable materials are often tougher and cheaper, but you might end up feeling clammy and uncomfortable if you're working hard, especially on a warm day.
So if I picture myself paddling intensely, getting hot, a breathable material is probably worth it, even if it costs a little more.
Sounds like you're getting the idea. It's about finding the right balance, performance, comfort, and your budget, of course. And I should mention there are even dry suits specifically designed for women.
Oh, really? What makes those different?
Well, women's specific suits take into account the, differences in anatomy.
Oh, makes
They
sense.
might have features placed differently, like drop seats or those front relief zippers, and the whole cut and fit are made for more comfort.
So it's not just marketing. There are real reasons to choose them.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered a lot about the types of dry suits, but when it comes to picking one out, there are still some key things to think about. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Okay, so we've got the basics, but now I need the nitty-gritty details. When I'm ready to shop, what makes one dry suit better than another? What should I be looking for?
Now we're getting to the good stuff. And this is where we can really connect those features to what you need as a paddler. First off, let's talk gasket material. So gaskets are those seals, at the neck, wrists, ankles. They're what keeps the water from getting in.
Right.
And the most common materials you'll see are latex and neoprene. Latex gives you a really tight seal, which is awesome for staying totally dry.
Sounds good.
But some people find it kind of uncomfortable, right against their skin.
Mm-hmm.
And some people can't even wear latex, allergies and all that.
Yeah.
Neoprene, on the other hand, much softer, more forgiving. The trade-off there is that it might let a little bit of water in, especially if the seal isn't perfect.
So it's like a comfort versus performance thing.
Right.
If I really want to stay dry, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, latex is the way to go.
That's a good way to put it. But fit is also super important. How well those gaskets seal depends on how well they fit you.
Right.
They should be snug, but not cutting off your circulation.
Like a blood pressure cuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can't just, guess based on your usual size. Trying a dry suit on before you buy it, that's essential.
Okay.
Not just for the gaskets, but the whole fit of the suit.
Gotcha.
Different brands fit differently, and remember, you'll have layers underneath. So factor that in when you're figuring out sizes.
No online impulse purchases then.
Got it.
Got it. Now, another thing I keep thinking about is movement. I kind of have this image of dry suits being stiff, compared to just paddling in regular clothes. Is that true?
Well, there's definitely an adjustment period. I mean, they're not as flexible as a t-shirt, but you get used to it pretty quickly. Adapt your paddling a bit. One thing to look for is what they call an articulated design. That basically means the knees and elbows are pre-bent, so you have a better range of motion.
Oh, like they've already built in the flexibility you'll need.
Yep. Okay, now try to picture this. You're out there all cozy in your dry suit, but then nature calls.
Uh-oh.
What do? Is it a big hassle to, take a bathroom break?
That's what I've been wondering.
Well, that's where those relief zippers or those drop seats we were talking about really come in handy.
Okay, good. So I'm not, trapped in there.
Not at all. Dry suits these days are made for the real world. And like I said, some of the women's specific suits even have those front relief zippers, which some women prefer.
Good to know. So all these features, it's really adding up. I'm starting to understand why dry suits are an investment. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
what kind of price range are we talking about here?
They definitely are an investment. But the good news is there's a pretty wide range of prices depending on the brand, the features, the materials. You can find basic suits for a few $100s.
Okay.
But then those high-end ones, the expedition grade suits, those can be $1,000 or more.
So like anything else, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But it's also about finding the sweet spot between your budget and what you actually need.
Makes sense.
No need to go all out for features you won't use.
Right, right. It goes back to matching the suit to like my paddling style, the conditions I'll be in. Now, what about renting versus buying? Is that a thing with dry suits?
Oh, absolutely. Renting is a great way to try out different styles, different brands before you commit.
Okay.
It's also a better option if you only use it a few times a year or if you're just starting out and want to see what it's all about.
I like that idea. Takes the
Yeah.
pressure off. Maybe I can even rent one with a latex gasket and see if I can handle it.
There you go. And a lot of rental shops also do guided trips. That can be a fantastic way to learn from experienced paddlers and get comfortable with the dry suit in a, safe environment.
That's smart. Having some guidance is always helpful with new gear.
Speaking of new, dry suits aren't just tea for recreational kayaking.
Oh, really?
They've got a whole history, and people use them for all sorts of water sports, even professional stuff.
Huh. So where else might I see a dry suit in action?
Well, they're crucial for sea kayaking, whitewater kayaking, even stand-up paddleboarding if it's cold. Basically, anytime you might end up in cold water unexpectedly, a dry suit's your best friend.
So it's like a safety net that also keeps you super warm and comfy. You mentioned a history, though. Where did the whole dry suit thing even come from?
Believe it or not, they've been around for quite a while.
Huh.
They were originally for diving and military use. Situations where staying dry and warm was like life or death.
Oh, so it's something that was adapted and refined
Yeah.
for like regular people to use?
Exactly. As materials got better, designs got better, they became lighter, more comfortable, way more accessible.
It's cool how so much outdoor gear starts out super specialized, then eventually trickles down to us regular folks.
It really is.
So speaking of pushing boundaries, what about the future of dry suits? Any cool stuff coming down the line? What's next for staying dry out there?
Well, the science behind the materials is always evolving. So we can expect even lighter, more breathable, tougher fabrics.
Makes sense.
And with all this wearable tech these days, I wouldn't be surprised to see dry suits with sensors, maybe even communication devices built in.
Woo, that's getting high tech. Imagine a dry suit that monitors your temperature, tracks your location, maybe even sends an SOS if you need help.
Not as crazy as it sounds. And who knows, maybe one day we'll even have self-drying dry suits. Shed water like a duck.
Now that would be a game changer. I'd be all over that.
It would definitely change how we think about staying dry in any situation.
It sounds like the future of dry suits is pretty bright.
Oh, for sure. And, with the right knowledge and some preparation, a dry suit can really open up a whole new world of paddling.
I'm definitely seeing that. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Actually choosing the right dry suit for your needs. There are so many options, so many features. Where do you even start?
It can be a bit overwhelming.
Right, like so many choices.
No, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Just start by thinking about, what kind of paddling you do and the conditions you're usually out in.
Okay, so let's say I'm just a recreational paddler, mostly calm lakes and rivers, nothing too crazy. Where would you point me?
In that case, I'd say a front entry dry suit with neoprene gaskets.
Okay.
They're generally easier to get on and off, and neoprene is pretty comfy with good water tightness for those calmer conditions.
Makes sense.
It's a good all-around option for casual paddling.
All right, what if I'm ready to, step it up a bit, try some sea kayaking, maybe some rougher water? What should I be looking for then?
For that kind of stuff, yeah, you'll probably want to consider a rear entry suit.
Okay.
More streamlined fit. That zipper placement makes a difference, especially if you're doing any rolling or bracing.
Right, right.
And for rougher water, you might want to go with latex gaskets. Get that extra tight seal.
Even if it's not as comfy.
Yeah, sometimes you got to prioritize performance, Staying dry above all else.
Okay, so it's like matching the level of, I guess, seriousness.
Exactly. And when you're talking about those rougher conditions, you might even want things like reinforced knees, elbows, extra durability.
Makes sense.
A hood could be a good idea too, especially if the weather can change fast where you're paddling.
Right, got to be prepared. So now I'm picturing those really hardcore paddlers. The ones out there in icy water. What kind of suits are they using?
Ah, those folks. They need the top of the line stuff. Expedition grade dry suit, Multiple layers of breathable fabric, probably latex gaskets for sure,
Hmm.
and all the bells and whistles, pockets for gear, reflective tape, maybe even a P-valve?
Wait, a P-valve. Okay, that's next level. But I guess when you're out in those conditions, every little bit helps. So it's all about finding the right suit for what you do.
That's the key takeaway. The right tool for the job. And remember, no matter what kind of dry suit you get, taking care of it properly will make it last a lot longer.
Okay, so treat it with respect.
Exactly.
Well, this has been awesome. Really eye-opening, this whole deep dive into dry suits. It's amazing how much tech and thought goes into something that seems so simple at first.
It's more than just a waterproof onesie.
Right. But as we wrap up, I want to bring it back to why we paddle in the first place. It's about being out in nature, experiencing the water, challenging yourself.
Couldn't agree more. And the
Yeah.
dry suit, with all its fancy features, it's really just a tool to help us do that better, more comfortably, more safely.
So to everyone listening, I hope this has given you a whole new appreciation for dry suits. And next time you're thinking about heading out, even if it's a bit chilly, remember a dry suit can open up a whole world of possibilities. Go explore, chase those sunsets, don't let a little cold water stop you.
Happy paddling.